With the draft and free agency behind us, rosters are pretty much set going into the 2023-24 NFL season. It's time for some fantasy football. It's never too early. Let's dive into my countdown from 20 to 11 as of today of this year's quarterback class. We're going to start here with some honorable mentions. First up, Jimmy G with the Raiders in that offense and reuniting with Josh McDaniels, who we know was with, that pairing was together in New England for many, many years, won a couple Super Bowls, but he could end up being a very solid quarterback too this year. My other honorable mention is Kyler Murray. Look, when draft day comes, he'll most likely be in my top 20. I love Kyler Murray, right? He's fun. But as of now, we don't have a set return date for him, and I can't put a quarterback in my top 20 who may miss up to 10 games this upcoming season, right? But good news. It doesn't look like D-Hop is going anywhere. If Kyler's back from day one, he'll have one of the most elite receivers in the league at his arsenal. But we're going to start here at number 20. Trey Lance. Look, the trade capital is there with him. This might be, you might be raising some eyebrows with this pick. But for what the Niners gave up for Trey Lance, they have to get the absolute most out of him. I get it, he's very boomer bust, and he's only thrown 420 passes since high school. He has health concerns, and there's going to be a quarterback competition there with Brock Purdy, maybe even Sam Darnold, right? But look, the trade capital is there with them. They're going to try and get the absolute most out of Trey Lance before he's out of there at least. And let's just lay it out there. Trey Lance, any quarterback looks good in the Shanahan system. Trey Lance is a dangerous runner. He has surprising arm talent, tons of untapped potential, which if you make this draft pick on draft day, you're going to be betting on his upside. He's a potential league surprising winner, right? I believe he's a quarterback 2 with a spot start quarterback 1 potential against the right matchup. My number 19 is Matthew Stafford. Look, last year he was number 32 among quarterbacks in the NFL. He's coming off of only a 9-game season, which was the most terrible 9-game stretch of his NFL career, right? He's also coming off of a spinal cord surgery. So things are piling up against Matt Stafford here, but it only gets worse. We know Matt Stafford is interception prone. He's had 25 interceptions in his last 26 games. That's not what you want to see out of your franchise or fantasy quarterback, right? We're speaking in fantasy terms here. But, I mean, look, last year, or in 2021, when he was healthy, he was the number 6 quarterback among the league with the Rams, right? Now they have a new offensive coordinator here in Los Angeles. Mike LaFleur is coming over from the Jets, which, look, we know one thing last year from the Jets offense. If it was a quarterback not named Zach Wilson, if it was Mike White or Joe Flacco, this team aired the ball out. Those quarterbacks had games where they had 45, 50 passing attempts. If he could bring that to Los Angeles, Mike LaFleur, as the new OC, with a pass-happy scheme, with an offense that has Cooper Kupp, Matt Stafford might be a surprising low-end quarterback 2, maybe even just a set quarterback 2 here in this upcoming season. Moving over to Derek Carr at number 18. Look, he's coming off of the number 17 quarterback last year, and that was only because he was benched the last 2 games for Jarrett Stidham. Let's not forget that. But look, let's start with the negatives here for Derek Carr, as right now he is viewed in a negative light. We know Derek Carr throughout his entire career, even at Fresno State, right? He's never brought rushing value to the NFL or to his game, and he's coming off of his worst career year. Can he rebound? If you make this pick, you're betting that a quarterback that's coming off of a very questionable year can rebound. And not to mention, he's joining an offense that under Dennis Allen last season was a very run-heavy offense. So Derek Carr, not a lot of things are looking up for him. But on the plus side, this may be the best core of receiving options with a returning Michael Thomas who needs to prove himself that he can still play more than 4 games in a season. You have an emerging Chris Olave that's going to be looking to take that second-year jump that we love to see in young wide receivers. He's also going to have an Alvin Kamara, which we'll talk about him on Friday, but we don't know what's going to go on with Alvin Kamara with his legal issues off the field. But if he's on the field, we know the receiving threat Alvin Kamara can be. So maybe the best receiving options core-wise that Derek Carr's ever had in his career, right? I believe Derek Carr could be a quarterback 2 with upside for your fantasy team this season. And I believe with the right matchup, he can get you about 15 to 17 points. Derek Carr, someone to look out for. And he's going to be old reliable over there on the waiver wire. Moving over here to number 17, Geno Smith. A guy that, hey, they wrote me off, but I didn't write back. Maybe dropping the line of the year last season. Look, his receiving options are there. He has DK Metcalf. He has Tyler Lockett. This team went out there and maybe added the best receiver in this draft class in Jackson Smith and Jigba, JSN for short. And not to mention, Noah Fant's coming off of maybe one of his best years here as a pro in the NFL. So those four guys are going to be great receiving options for Geno Smith, who's going to be looking to, I guess, at least maintain his level of play from last season. Another good thing, it's going to be a very competitive division. Now look, when he plays San Fran, that defense is very tough, right? But this offense, no matter if it's the Cardinals who have those surprising weeks, or the Rams who might have a bounce back year, or we know the Super Bowl contending San Francisco 49ers, it's going to be a very competitive division. The Seahawks offense is going to need to score tons of points to compete, and Geno Smith is the catalyst of this offense. He's going to need to be that leader to lead them down the field and score all those points, right? But last year, we know for a good thing, unlike Matthew Stafford, Geno Smith took care of the ball. He led the league in completion percentage. He takes care of the ball, doesn't throw too many interceptions, which is always good for our fantasy football teams. I believe overall he could be a low-end QB1, high-end QB2, but we must talk about the negatives here with Geno Smith, as he just signed a new deal, as we'll talk about it here in a little bit. But when players in any sport typically sign big contracts, right, they usually take the next year off, in a sense, right? Not many times will you see a player play elite in their contract year, then sign a new deal and play even better. Most players they have that weight off their shoulders. I don't have to play as hard this season, and their level of play just drops a little bit, right? So we have to worry about that here for Geno Smith. And I'm just going to say it. Geno Smith came out of nowhere last season. And with teams that now have more film on him as a starter, what he likes, what he doesn't like, you can't expect a repeat of last season, is the point I'm getting at here for Geno Smith. But who knows? He proved me and the rest of the world wrong last season. Can he do again here in 2023? I don't believe so. He won't be the quarterback 5 again. But for me, still, a respectable low-end quarterback 1 as we move over here to Mr. Old Reliable. Old man, Captain Kirk, Captain Check Down. Number 16 here for me is going to be Kirk Cousins. Look, year to year, he's a consistent top 12 quarterbacks, which if you don't know why that benchmark is important, that means in most leagues, he is going to be a reliable starter, right, as a top 12 quarterback. But he's one of those guys that year in and year out, if you miss out on those top quarterbacks, if you go running back heavy early on, or if you have a mix of receivers, tight ends, everything, right? Receivers, running backs, tight ends. Kirk Cousins is always going to be that guy that you get later in like the 8th, 9th, 10th, maybe even later than that. Those type of rounds later on in the draft. Kirk Cousins, all reliable. I mean, not to mention, this year, he's going to have Justin Jefferson. He's going to have TJ Hockenson. He's going to have my favorite receiver out the draft class in Jordan Addison. The weapons are maybe the best they've been there in Minnesota for Kirk Cousins this upcoming season. This team did lose Adam Thielen, who he had chemistry with. We know Kirk Cousins very rarely brings rushing upside to your team. And the biggest thing for me with Kirk Cousins, and I think the unattractive thing that a lot of fantasy managers stay away from Kirk Cousins because of this reason, is because even though he's finished as a quarterback 11, and quarterback 8 in the last 3 years, is because he never has like those week winning games. He never has those explosive 35 to 40 point games that can single-handedly carry your team to a victory. Unlike quarterbacks that like Justin Fields, or, we're talking about the elite of the elite, but there's quarterbacks in the league, and there's quarterbacks above of Kirk Cousins in these rankings that I believe have that upside to win you a week, right? Maybe if your running back goes down or a receiver underperforms, you have that quarterback or that guy that can carry your team. Kirk Cousins, to me, he's never been a guy that could do that unless he's playing the Indianapolis Colts overseas, right, where he came back down like 30 points. But to me, Kirk Cousins, he reliable. He's going to be around that 8 to 12 range, and he's going to be a low-end quarterback 1 this upcoming season. Jared Goff at number 15. Look, he revived his career last season under his offensive coordinator, Ben Johnson, who the Detroit Lions retained in this draft here. They did address the running back situation. They brought in Jahmyr Gibbs, one of the most explosive pass catchers in this draft class. They still have the sun god Amon-Ra. They aren't going to have Jameson Williams for 6 games, but when Jameson Williams is on the field, he can be that explosive, field-stretching playmaker that Jared Goff needs. This team still has a great O-line. We've seen this offseason. I mean, sure, this team did draft Hendon Hooker, which if you're going to worry about a 25-year-old rookie in his first year, then Jared Goff's not going to be your cup of tea. But to me, Jared Goff, this team has shown that they're very committed to him. They want to win with him as the quarterback. And even though Jared Goff has only had one top 12 finish in the last 4 seasons and no Jameson Williams for the first 6 games of this season, he's still going to have that potential to be that spot start quarterback 1, high-end quarterback 2 that you can grab here in rounds 8 through 10 of your drafts coming up in this season. Russell Wilson, number 14. To me, look, he finished number 16 last year despite missing 2 games, right? So even though he had his worst career year, and the fact that he is a walking, flashing warning sign here for fantasy players in the 2023 season, he still finished number 16, right? And that, that's right outside of a quarterback 1. But, I mean, still, Russell Wilson, he's not a rushing threat at this point in his career. He made tons and tons of questionable decisions last year. There was compilations of him missing reads or missing wide open touchdowns. And obviously, that's not what we want as fantasy football players, especially in our quarterback, right? As he burned me last year in the league. So I can't believe I'm ranking him at number 14. But look, Sean Payton is in town. If anybody can salvage Russell Wilson, it's Sean Payton, a guy that salvaged Drew Brees in his career coming over from San Diego at the time to New Orleans. But this team has the receiving options. They have a healthy Courtland Sutton, a healthy Jerry Jeudy, who's also on a contract year. Jerry Jeudy, if he wants a big contract, this is the year that he plays out of his mind, right? This team's going to get a returning Tim Patrick. They're going to have a KJ Hamler who might spread his wings this upcoming season, as well as a Marquez Callaway coming over from the Saints, who he made some explosive plays last season as well. One of the biggest positives here for Russell Wilson in this 2023 season is that they signed Mike McGlinchey, right tackle for the 49ers. The O-line just overall has gotten way better for this Denver Broncos team. And not to mention, their potential all-star running back, Javonte Williams, is going to be back from injury, which takes the pressure off of Russell Wilson here in the stacked AFC West, who, not to mention, Russell Wilson in this AFC West, it's a division that is set for shootouts anytime these teams match up. And maybe not the Raiders, but who knows? Jimmy G could surprise us in this season, but this division is set for shootouts. It's been for years, and Russell Wilson, I think, if he's going to have a bounce-back year, this is the year to do it. This is the year to remind people, I'm still Russell Wilson. Borderline top 10 finish here for him, I think, in this upcoming season. Aaron Rodgers, as we have 3 guys left here to talk about. But Aaron Rodgers, look, the positives. It's Aaron Rodgers, right? Over the last 4 seasons that he's played, he's had an average of the number 6 finish here in fantasy football, which is always what you want from your starting quarterback. His receiving options this year, he's going to have Garrett Wilson. He's another one of those second-year receivers that we look to take that amazing superstardom leap. Garrett Wilson, as we'll talk about him sometime in the future, but I'm very excited for what Garrett Wilson can do for fantasy players this season. Aaron Rodgers, he loves his chemistry guys. Alan Lazard came with him from Green Bay, so he's going to be the number 2 there. Not to mention Breece Hall is going to complement Rodgers out the backfield because we know Rodgers loves his safety blankets. Now, the negatives for Aaron Rodgers is he's coming off of the most interceptions thrown in a season since 2008, which I believe was his first full year as a starter. But last year, he was quarterback 21 among quarterbacks who played at least 10 games. So despite the quarterback 13 finish, that's just eye candy for you there. The Jets, they also have a great defense, which may turn Rodgers into the best game manager in the NFL. And I hate to say that, but in the AFC East, the division is stacked. But outside of that, if this Jets defense gets rolling and plays like many people expect them to play with how much talent they have on that side of the ball, it might turn Rodgers into a game manager. That's something we got to look out for here in this fantasy season. And another thing is it usually takes those star quarterbacks or just star players and coaches in any sport. It usually takes them a year to blend and to mesh and to both learn what they love and to be effective at that on the field or on the court in any sport, right? But Aaron Rodgers, he's coming to a new team, new environment with a great defense that might turn him into a game manager, but at the same time, he has the receiving options, and it's Aaron freaking Rodgers. With all that being said, he's a low-end quarterback one here for you in this 2023 fantasy season. Closing out here with Daniel Jones. I believe he's a guy who's coming off of his best career year as a pro. He limited his turnovers, which was the biggest thing to me, but at the same time, he was a quarterback one last season with Isaiah Hodgins as his wide receiver one. And it should you can only imagine Daniel Jones' play gets better with more weaponry that they brought in this offseason. The biggest weapon that they brought in this offseason is a healthy Darren Waller, a guy that is set to be playing this entire season, right? But that's the biggest question. Can he stay healthy? We don't know. All we know right now is Darren Waller is going to play a heck of a 6 to 8 game stretch here with Daniel Jones to start the season. The rushing upside, it's always there for Daniel Jones, as throughout his fantasy career, he averages an extra 60 points per season on the ground. That's what you want from your fantasy quarterback. He has those week winning performances that you love to see. But again, like I mentioned with Geno Smith, Daniel Jones just signed a new contract. Will he get complacent? That's a question we're going to have to wait and find out, right? And that's also another thing we talked about with Darren Waller. Whether if it's Sterling Shepard, whether if it's Darren Waller, whether if it's other guys here in this receiving room for New York, can they stay healthy long enough for Daniel Jones to be a very effective quarterback one? As we saw last year, he did it with no receivers. Can these receivers stay healthy long enough just to make Daniel Jones take him to that next level that we love to see from a fantasy quarterback? Last year, he made a believer out of me, and this year, he might end up on one or two of my teams. We're going to finish off here with DeSean Watson, maybe a little biased, but hear me out, as he finished as quarterback number 36 last season, but he was on pace to be a quarterback one. If you go by game per basis, he was on pace to finish as the number 12 quarterback, which in most leagues, again, would have been a quarterback one. Small sample size, but still, that point is something you want to throw out there. We're going to start with the negatives here with DeSean Watson. He looked very rusty last year. How much of that are we going to see this upcoming season? I think it's hard to believe that for strictly this season alone and why I have him at number 11, I believe it's hard to believe that he can go back to his Houston days this upcoming year, which, to me, especially in a historically run-heavy offense with Kevin Stefanski, you can't expect a guy that took 800 days off of football to come back and not look rusty. But at the same time, he did. He looked very rusty. And even with a full offseason with this team and a full summer, I don't think he can just automatically jump back to the MVP level player that we know DeSean Watson can be. At the same time, DeSean Watson, he has finished as a top 5 quarterback in scoring his first 3 years as a starter in his career. So we know the potential is there. He is a top 5 talent at the quarterback position. Despite fantasy, despite anything, he's a top 5 talent at the quarterback position. We know he has good enough receiving options, maybe better than what he did in his last year in Houston. With Amari Cooper, David Njoku, Peoples-Jones. We brought in Elijah Moore, David Bell, who might take a leap this season. The receiving options are there. We know Watson has a little bit of rushing upside. And look, I'm just going to say this, even as a Browns fan, and even though I have him ranked as number 11, draft this man as a high-end quarterback 2 with the upside to be an elite quarterback 1. We know the potential's there, but there's tons of questions here with DeSean Watson. Can he be that reliable piece? We got to wait to find that out, right? But DeSean Watson here with my number 11 spot. Just to recap, DeSean Watson, Daniel Jones, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, and Jared Goff is my 11 through 15. My 16 through 20 is Kirk, Geno, Derek, Carr, Matthew Stafford, and Trey Lance. That's it. That's going to do it for today's show. Let me know down below what you think about our lists look, fantasy football is up for controversy no matter how you split it, right? Quarterbacks especially, that's one of those positions where Do you go with the safer quarterback, or do you bet on the upside, right? Especially on your fantasy football teams. It's a big question. But let me know down below what you guys think, what you would change, and how your list looks going into this 2023 NFL season. But a quick plug here before we get out of here. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, my co-host and I, we talk about the latest and greatest sports news. Every single week at 1 o'clock, we drop a podcast. We've been consistent. Haven't missed today for 6 months, going on 7. And now we're dropping 4 videos a week. Check us out, man. All we ask for is a listen. And if you enjoy it, tell a friend to tell a friend. As this podcast is growing and with great support, can't thank you guys enough. But again, let me know down below what your guys' lists look like. Drop a like, subscribe to the channel, all that good stuff. Peace, love, and hugs. I'll see you guys tomorrow at 1 o'clock if you want to listen, as we're going to be covering some of the latest and greatest sports news. This is Owen. I'll see you guys next time.